to try to bring you up to speed with regards to our preparations and as far as our Olympic program is concerned. We might have had sporadic interactions with some of the colleagues present here, but we felt it necessary that today, with 100 days to go to the start of the tournament, perhaps it's befitting to be able to update you in terms of where we are. Of course, under COVID-19 pandemic, we all are aware of the impact that COVID-19 has had on the Olympics program, but generally on sports globally. And we are no different. We have been affected. The Olympics were on, the Olympics were off. The Olympics were on, the Olympics were off. But today we are sure that as we sitting here, the Olympics is going ahead and we are 100 days away from the start of the tournament. So let me take the opportunity to also give you a little bit of a brief background of what has been happening behind the scenes during the COVID period. You'd remember that things got a little bit better, or almost to...
The minute, Coach, with regards to your sitting...
Yeah, with regards to when we started with football activities or sporting activities around October, we didn't have an opportunity then to have a camp going, and most of our preparation program, of course, will be based on the FIFA weeks, because outside of the FIFA weeks, as I said, you'd be looking for travel. And at that time, of course, the situation of COVID-19 was a bit sensitive, so we opted not to go into camp as per our program in October. Then in November, we had an opportunity to go on tour to Saudi Arabia, where we played 2 matches against the Saudis. We lost 1 and drew 1. And you'd remember that we took almost a totally new team of almost 23 players there, most of the players that were doing very well in their particular clubs. We were, of course, at that time also looking for an opportunity to bring some of our overseas-based players, but due to COVID restrictions on travel, we couldn't. However, the objective then was to widen the pool, as I always said, in the November camp. We looked at players like Shane Roberts, Lele Tuskelem, Goodman Mosele, who's had a very good 2 seasons at Baroka. So we're able to bring them closer to the national team and test their talents at this level. And of course, along with that, we brought in our under-20 graduates from the World Cup, players like Nkosingphile Ngobo, Promise Mukuma, Njabulo Blom, Sipesi Tlemkize. So, and out of that camp, we were able to see how far, are they from where we are as the under-23, and how have they developed as players, and how could they come in and add value in widening the pool. But also, having announced that squad of 78, that a lot of people thought is too big, but we're necessarily saying that this is how wide our pool is that is available for the Olympics. We then had an opportunity to get together again in March under very trying circumstances. Ideally, we wanted to have international competition. We had invitations to go play countries like Australia, in Qatar. Of course, we wanted to take advantage because then Qatar was open with the Club World Cup. But unfortunately, immediately the Club World Cup finished, then the restrictions changed in Qatar, and our proposed matches there with Australia and potentially Egypt were called off. But behind the scenes, we were also aware that that was a possibility, and we put together a tour in eThekwini, and thanks again to KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Government and the Sports and Recreation Department. They hosted us. Then we opted to play 2 friendly matches with our professional teams, Maritzburg United and Golden Arrows. And again, the mission there being to look at the local players that we haven't had a look at. We have players like Evidence Mokupa, Ashley Dupree, who are doing very well at their club and serious talent for South Africa. But we also looked at where is, some of the players that qualified the team for the Olympics, players like Grant Majiman, Keletso Makhalwa, Tabiso Monyane. So we brought them in, and in that particular camp, we were able to assess how far behind they are due to lack of game time, as much as we were integrating some new talented players. So, and again, of course, we were looking to bring in some of our overseas-based players, and South Africa was a no-go area in terms of COVID protocols. So that denied us an opportunity to see some of our young talented players that are overseas, your Spepelos Toles, Luke Leroux, Haukelo Chauke, Siabonga Likenza, and there's many more. There's Bradley Crosses. So if there's one area where one would have wished to have more opportunities was to integrate most of our young overseas-based players, but unfortunately, COVID played up, and that's where we are. Now, out of all these camps that we've been through, it's been very, very good and exciting and in line with the preparation that we had anyway, despite the challenges that we might have faced there and there in terms of having especially the overseas-based players. But we're able to assess players, of course, through their club performances in terms of how well they are doing, in widening our pool and test this talent, especially on a local level. Because these are all players that are future international players for Bafana Bafana. We're also able to integrate some of our under-20 graduates from Korea in 2017 and Poland in 2019. Also, in these camps, we were able to address some of our key challenges, the goalkeeping department, the defense, especially in the fullback areas. We lack quality and experience in depth, although we have good talented players. So we're able to bring them closer in and see what is it that they could bring in the group, and from a mentality point in relation to international competition. Players like Sfiso Ngobeni, we brought him in and we were able to appreciate the talent that we see in the PSL but test it at the international level. And we know, at this point in time where we are with players like that, for example. Also, there's the mental preparation side of the players, the group, as we bring them in different phases to try to prepare them and make them understand what are the demands of going to the Olympics in relation to where they are in their clubs. Also from a tactical development of the team, try to align them and make them understand that sometimes the way they play in the team and the way they would be expected to play in the national team, we need to trickle certain things. And for example, you'd see that often a lot of teams play with a three-man defense and use what would consider fullbacks as wingbacks. And that presents a little bit of tactical challenges in terms of for us going forward. So, but with these camps, we're able to work with the players on those particular areas. So that gives you a bit of background of what's been happening behind the scene and how the camps have benefited us. So now, in terms of the way forward, where are we now? We have now, out of these camps, been able to knuckle down that big pool of players that we had and trim it down to around 40 players. It could easily be 40, 45. You love them all, you want them all in the squad. But because the final squad selection would be 18 players, but plus 4 extra players that would be going to the Olympics, we also needed to be a little bit reasonable and bring the squad down, narrow it down in terms of where we are and the needs of the tournament, but not necessarily closing the lead on players that are outside of the squad that will announce now, because the assessment is ongoing. And of course, things can change. Injuries could creep in, and which would render any of the players who are still in the 78-man list eligible. Also, in terms of the next FIFA week, which will be very important and form our final assessment, in June, we're finalizing a tour to Dubai during the FIFA week of June, from the 5th to the 15th. We've got an invitation. And we're confident that we've committed, and we hope that the organizers would make it happen, because it's not only reliant on us. There's also other teams like Brazil, Egypt, Mexico, most of the qualified teams that have been invited. So we took advantage of that. And in that camp, I hope that we would have most of our foreign-based players available, but also integrate some of the players that have come through. And after that camp, would be able to reassemble towards the end of June, around 27, 28, where we would have probably a 25, 30-man squad that will prepare now for the Olympics as an Olympic squad, which would again announce that later on. And then from that pool of players will be able to select the final squad that will be representing South Africa at the Olympic Games. And as part of our program as well, difficult as it is under COVID-19, we did a lot of medical introspection. The biggest, challenge being the issue of time zone difference. And you'd know that traveling to the East Asia, we are 7 hours behind. So then for each hour, you need a day of acclimatization. So we've put together an acclimatization program that would, at this stage, we agreed with the medical department that 14 days minimum would be ideal for us to be in Asia, so that we can deal with the issue of the 7 days required for acclimatization. And then the 7 days, of course, we are allowed to come into the Olympic Village as per the rules of the tournament organizers. So at this point in time, of course, that means then 14 days before the tournament, ideally, on a minimum level, we want to be in Asia, if not Tokyo itself, which will be around the 8th of July. But of course, in an ideal situation, 3 weeks would be perfect. And we're working on a few options, invitations in terms of clubs that want to play us once they get into Asia. So we could benefit and have 21 days, which would be perfect and ideal. But at the moment, we've committed to 14 days to be in Tokyo to make sure that the team has good preparation and acclimatizes well to the environment, so that the acclimatization process doesn't affect negatively on the performance of the players. And in that regard, of course, we've got matches that are lined up already, which we'll confirm and announce later on once we are in Tokyo. Having said that, I indicated that the process of reaching the final 22-man squad, you can imagine, is a very tedious one. It's a very difficult one, but it's the work that is before us. And we continue to assess and monitor these players at their clubs. And we look forward to the June camp especially, where we think that, would be 80% there in terms of our final squad composition, so that when we come to the Olympic preparation camp, we are as close as possible to the final squad. Having said that, gentlemen, I'm happy to announce to you now the list of the 40 players that, based on our assessment, evaluation, and shortlisting of this particular group for the Olympic preparation process. And the names are as follows. In the goalkeeping department, we've got Mondli Mpoto, we've got Fiso Mlungwana. We also have Ronan Williams and Ricardo Goss as our experienced players that would consider. In the defenders, we have Riff Rosler, Luke Fleurs, Tishias Malepe, Gatleo Mohamme, Tabiso Monyane, Tendo Mukumela, Sfiso Ngobeni, Bongani Sam, Atinko Sidlala, Luke Leroux, Kanya Leshabela at Leicester City, Kobamelo Kodisang in Portugal, Sporting Braga, Gift Links in Denmark, Kamuelo Mahlatsi, Etswalos, Kelezo Makhalwa, Grant Mageman Khauhelo Chauke at Southampton, Sipho Mbule, Happy Machiane, Tebo Mokwena, Nkosi Mpile Ngobo, Goodman Mosele, Khauhelo Sikota, Spepelo Stole, Ashley Dupree, and in the forward line we've got Lyle Foster, who's in Portugal, Zakele Lepasa, Fakhri Lakay, Evidence Makopa, Luther Singh, also in Portugal, Siabonga Ligenza, young boy who's doing very well in England at Cardiff City. And from the senior players, as I indicated, the two goalkeepers, Ronan Williams and Ricardo Goss. Then we have Pesitau, we have Temba Zwane, we have Musa Lebusa, we have Ntobi Mvala, and we have Tapelo Morena. So that, if my mathematics is right, gives us a list of about 40 players that I've mentioned that we've shortlisted at this point in time, going forward in terms of our preparations. But I want to reiterate that it doesn't necessarily close the lid on the players that are not mentioned on this list, because our assessment is always continual. Thank you very much.
Coach, I'm sure you've given me too much information. Do you have questions, Mr. Kazi? You don't need to take down the names.
Yeah, where's Thabiso Sithole when you need him most? I would have loved to have him here to break down that announcement for us. But 40 players announced, names being announced going to the Tokyo Olympics. Let's go to